Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Dinin, Director of Dinin Arts Management and Consulting. I am here with composer Jonathan Leshnoff, a longtime client. Jonathan is a world-renowned orchestral composer, actually a composer of many different styles, but we are focusing today on a new oratorio that he is bringing to the world, we hope, in the 2021 season. This oratorio, which has been in the works for several years, is called The Sacrifice of Isaac. And it is based on the biblical story of just that, the sacrifice of Isaac. So, hello, Jonathan.
Hi, Sarah.
So, let's hear more about this work. I would love to hear. Please tell me, what kind of texts are you using for this oratorio?
Well, the texts themselves are based on the biblical account of the sacrifice of Isaac. The problem is that the biblical account is very sparse, and I wanted to make a storyline, make it more dramatic, so to speak. The traditional interpretations are embedded within the text, but it's not apparent just reading it. So I've used a wide variety of uniquely Jewish sources, rabbinic writings, um, Talmudic statements that amplify the text of this oratorio to give it shape.
That sounds great. I'm curious, why did you choose these specific texts? How did
I
you decide to
chose
shape
some because some of them are quite shocking and provocative. Like, I would think that rabbinical texts are all technical or glorious and this and that, but not at all. I found a midrash, a rabbinical discussion, where the angels are taunting Isaac and making fun of him, and say, "Your old man has gone crazy." Uh, I found another text where the angels are yelling at God, saying, "This is unnatural. It's cruel. What's going on?" And so I love so much the human aspect that were related in these texts that I decided to use them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. Jonathan, you've written three other oratorios in the past. The most recent one is actually very relevant because it was premiered and commissioned by the Atlanta Symphony. And the Atlanta Symphony, we hope with everything going on, still plans to premiere this work, and they're certainly commissioning it. So this is like a nice continuation, but I'd love to hear, how does this specific oratorio differ from your past three oratorios?
Yes, of course, with the COVID crisis, the performance is scheduled for April of 2021, and we're looking forward to that. Hopefully, things will pass. The other oratorios that I've written are more theoretical in nature. Zohar was, I'm quite fond of the work, and but it's not a storyline. It's more about conflicting ideas um, based on a mystical theme. And the one called Dark Bells, which is for solo viola, choir, and orchestra, quite a combination, is based on poetry of Edgar Allan Poe. So it's in its own little universe. But this one is truly telling a story.
That's great. And I'd love to hear more, just, kind of continuing on that theme. There's this idea of programmatic music, music that's telling a story, and it's a whole different challenge to compose, I'm sure. Trying to maybe fit into a storyline and write, according to what's going on in the story. Can you tell us a little bit more? Well, first of all, we should probably cover the story itself. I'm sure many are familiar with, the story of Abraham and Isaac, and the story of the sacrifice of Isaac, but can you tell us a bit about, how that interweaves with your composing, and, what it's like trying to write along with the storyline?
That's a good question. Um, uh, when I'm writing this oratorio, I almost feel like I'm writing a quasi opera. And don't quote me on that. I'll deny saying it. But what I mean is that in the other choral and orchestral works, I don't have time to reflect and be very orchestral, or not have to worry about a continuum. Some of the parts of this oratorio, I need transitional moments. I need contrasting arias. I need to literally have sometimes the music reflect exactly what's going on in the text. This happened in Zohar too, but it wasn't telling a story where I literally had to make God's voice mysterious, or I literally had to make Abraham's stretching of the hand frightening. In a programmatic sense. So this has really expanded my palette as a composer, because I feel like I'm slowly learning the techniques that Verdi and Puccini and all the great masters had when they would actually have the music tell a story.
Exactly. And you have characters in this story. There are several soloists who are portraying the various, protagonists of the story as well. I don't know if you'd like to talk about that, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I present Abraham in more of a nostalgic light, meaning um, it's it's unclear who the hero, so to speak, of the story is. Is it Abraham? Is it Isaac? Or is it both? But I've chosen to portray Abraham as sentimental. He starts the oratorio singing the blessing that parents give their children in Jewish tradition, not only on the Sabbath, but on the night before Yom Kippur, which is a very heartfelt blessing. And this is a quiet aria. And whenever Abraham says, "Here I am," when in the biblical text God says Abraham, he says, "Here I am," I always portray that in soft melismas. Um, the word of God is very surprising. When I have actual things that God said, so to speak, it's presented by a countertenor. A countertenor is a male voice who specializes in his falsetto. So he makes sounds like a very, very pure, almost boy's voice, maybe a quasi alto, but it's not a woman's voice. It sounds very, very different. And that's the word of God. It's not thundering and robust. It's quiet.
And pure.
Right.
That's great. And what about Isaac?
Isaac, I portray in a very unique light because Isaac's main aria is right after Abraham lifts his hand to kill Isaac. The lights go out, and one would think that there's screams or there's, but what happens is that the music gets very soft, only strings and harp. And Isaac, who's been casted as a very light tenor, a tenor to go very high, but not with tremendous power like a Wagner tenor, not that. He actually sings a Jewish hymn based on the love for God called Yedid Nefesh. It's sung to this day on the Sabbath. That essentially is a poem between humanity and God for humanity's desire to know and see God. And that's what Isaac sings at the time right before his death. And then he says a part of the traditional Jewish confession before death.
Wow, well, very powerful. We're all very excited to hear it. I know everyone is very anxious to return to the concert hall, but the plan is for spring 2021. Keep this on your radar. It's going to be a really special work with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and Robert Spano conducting on one of his final concerts as music director of the orchestra. So thank you, Jonathan, for sharing that with us. We can't wait to hear more.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Take care.